Because Shrouded Fable was such a small set, I skipped my usual road decks video. And as a result of that lost revenue, I was unable to buy a rare 10-foot tall Lopunny plushie from eBay. Well, I'm not making that mistake again. With Stellar Crown, I'm going to be showing off a footful of brand new decks that will win roughly 20% of the time, but people playing them will swear they're totally amazing and you should definitely try them. Based on Japanese results, the road deck with the best chance of making any sort of Giga impact in the Stellar Crown format is Crabominable. Thanks to the food prep ability, both Crabominable and Veluza see their attack cost reduced by 1 colorless energy for each Kofu in your discard pile. So with 4 Kofu in the bin, Veluza does 110 damage for free, while Crabominable does 250 damage for a single water energy. Not bad, so what's the problem? Well, you're wearing socks right now, stop that. Also, Kofu is a terrible supporter. You have to put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck to even activate Kofu, and after that it's just a draw 4. Yes, there's some strategies where it can be useful, but at its core, it's a draw 2. That's horrible. Basically, 4 copies of Kofu are in the deck because they have to be, not because they're useful. As you can see from this deck list, which is in the description so you can copy and paste it into live on September 12th, we plan to succeed but expect failure. 2 Squawkabilly EX plus 4 Carmine means you can do a ton of discarding on turn 1 going first, potentially getting a bunch of Kofu in the discard pile right away. Ultra Ball and Earthen Vessel also help get rid of Kofu, while Pokégear and Tatsugiri find them. Should Kofu be hiding like me when my ex-wife comes looking for alimony? Reversal Energy allows Crabominable to attack with just 2 Kofu in the discard, while Veluza can use a double turbo with 2 Kofu in the bin and chip 90 damage onto someone. Other options I've seen players in Japan mess around with are Crisis Punch, the Fighting Crabominable, and Meowstick. Because of the wording on food prep, any attack that Crabominable or Veluza uses has its cost reduced by 1 for each Kofu in your discard. So using Crisis Punch when they have 1 prize card remaining means you can do 280 damage for as little as 0 energy. The Fighting Crabominable can deal with all those fighting weak Pokemon and smash 340 damage for a reversal energy, while Meowstick can grab 2 Kofu upon evolution, but then it's mostly a useless bench sitter. Now, there is a card that makes this deck better, but we have no idea when it'll be released in English. That's the Selfie Stick. Despite being available in Japan for a bit, Roto Stick doesn't appear to be scheduled for an English launch in Stellar Crown, so that means it might be bumped to Surging Sparks in November. It's definitely a card that helps the crab, searching the top 4 cards of your deck and grabbing any supporters, but solely having to rely on Pokégear right now isn't a terrible thing. Still, if you enjoy Crabominable with Stellar Crown, keep Roto Stick on your radar for the future. I haven't seen a single Marowak deck do anything in Japan, so you know what that means. Pilot gets let loose like a Marshadow and has to create his own list that will definitely work perfectly and have 0 issues. While I'm probably setting myself up for failure by saying Marowak is good, I mean, come on, it is good. For 2 colorless energy, Marowak does 60 damage. Okay, that sucks. But if any of your bench Cubone have a damage counter on them, 60 turns into 180. Paired with the Cubone from 151, which boosts the attack power of your Marowak by 30, and it stacks, now Marowak can deal up to 270 damage for a reversal energy. Obviously that goes down to 250 with the double turbo, but you're still doing a good chunk of damage. The main obstacle will be getting a damage counter on Cubone. Using my gigantic brain, I've come up with the insane strategy of just going with Dodrio and Damage Pump. This way you can draw cards, easily move a damage counter around when you need to, and have a backup attacker if Marowak and a bunch of Cubone aren't available. I shied away from using Gapejaw Bog since the deck relies heavily on Buddy Puffin to get your Cubone into play, but it's definitely an option. Without Gapejaw, your only ways to get that damage on a Cubone is with Damage Pump, or by using the Emolga that does 10 damage to every bench Pokemon. As you can see from this deck list, I have a 3/3 Dodrio and Emolga to damage your own Pokemon and give you a pivot, ways to boost the damage to 280 so someone like Regidrago V-Star isn't out of range, and Radiant Jirachi because I think it's funny. Also, if you can activate Jirachi's ability or take a one-hit KO, you're golden. One of the ways to boost Marowak's damage is Practice Studio, which only bumps it by 10. While it's not much, going from 270 to 280 is just enough to one-shot Regidrago V-Star. What's going to hold Marowak back is a few things. For starters, you have to have 3 Cubone down alongside a Marowak to deal that 270, so bench space is at a premium. You could run Area 0 Underdepths, but then you'd need a Terra EX Pokemon or 2 and you want to limit the liabilities here. Maxing out at 270 isn't the best either. Yeah, Choice Belt and Defiance Band and Kieran and Practice Studio exist in the list to get you over the hump, But because Cubone has an ability and is so weak, you can't run someone like Frostlass unless you're crazy. And Monkey Dory is out of the question because your attachment for turn will have to go to Marowak. My list definitely isn't optimal as I've had zero chance to test it, so don't be afraid to try Radiant Alakazam to move some damage around and maybe soften up targets, or Maximum Belt to really push Marowak's damage over the edge. Using Bibarel instead of Dodrio isn't the dumbest thing in the world, as all Dodrio players know that drawing one extra card on a 0-card hand doesn't feel great. But playing with your Beaver when you have a small hand always feels great. You will have to run someone like Gengar and Damage Pump with that build, plus a couple more discard cards though. Despite its potential issues, Marowak is the one deck out of this video that I'm most excited to try, which will inevitably lead to Heartbreak, which you can experience live on Twitch after Stellar Crown comes out on Thursday, September 12th. When I originally talked about Drednaw in my Stellar Crown preview video, I made a slight mathematical oopsie for the first time in my YouTube career. You see, in my brilliance, I suggested that Drednaw can deal with Raging Bolt EX by simply attaching a Rigid Band, because then Raging Bolt would have to discard 3 energy totaling 210 damage to one-shot it. But then I awoke at 2 AM the next morning in a sweat, toes absolutely glistening. Rigid Band reduces the damage Drednaw takes by 30, so Raging Bolt still one-hit KOs it. Whoopsie. The reason that's a problem is because Drednaw's whole purpose in life is to be a meme. With its Impervious Shell ability, Drednaw prevents all damage done to it if that damage is 200 or more. The good news is that a deck like Dragapult EX has to rely on Jet Headbutt instead of Phantom Dive to deal damage, while someone like Charizard EX becomes useless once you take a single prize card. The bad news is that Gardevoir EX is a terrible matchup as they can easily manipulate the amount of damage they deal with someone like Drifloon. Same with Lugia V-Star. They can attach 2 double turbos to Lugia and do 180 damage, or just put 2 energy on a Minccino and hit 140. And while Regidrago V-Star might seem like an okay matchup, they can use Dragon Laser on Regidrago V, or even Ogerpon EX to impregnate your shell. So you have to get a little creative. Again, this is a Trust Your Pilot special, so don't think I've figured out everything by just throwing cards into a list and hoping they work. There's plenty of room for whacking off. But I went with the Hero's Tape and Luxurious Tape strategy here. This way, barring a Lost Vacuum or Jamming Tower, you're guaranteed to survive a hit with Drednaw. Hero's Tape is obviously the better option as it simply increases Drednaw's hit points by 100. Luxurious Tape is a bit more dangerous, giving up an extra prize card if you get KO'd by damage. There's a few ways to take advantage of the increased hit points. You could go with a Mega Healing build that runs Oricorio and Radiant Zarina and either Community Center or Area 0 Underdepths. Or you could play a version with Crushing Hammer and Pokemon League Headquarters to try and screw over basic decks but ultimately lose because Gardevoir is too strong. Or you could abandon the survival strategy and go for an attacking plus wall build that runs Frostlass and maybe Practice Studio. Or just go full wall and run Mimikyu along with Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX and try to cover as many bases as possible. Whatever you decide to do, you'll eventually hate your idea once you see Drednaw's attack. For 3 colorless energy, Reversal Energy will be your friend. It does 80 base damage plus 80 more if there's already damage counters on your opponent's active. So you'll essentially have to 3-shot everything with more than 240 hit points unless you get a damage counter on them early. Yeah, it really seems like you either hit the right matchup and win with Drednaw, or you hit the wrong matchup and life becomes impossible. Still, I gave it my best shot and came up with this list. I admit I may have cooked a little too hard here, because no matter which build I built, nothing felt perfect. But I think Frostlass with Bibarel and Radiant Zarina gives you the best chance of winning. Crispin opens up the possibility of attacking with Mimikyu, Ogerpon, or Drednaw out of nowhere, as it attaches a basic energy from the deck to one of your Pokemon. And Roseanne's backup allows you to recycle a Reversal Energy, Hero's Tape, Pokemon League HQ, and a Pokemon all at the same time, making it really strong here. Unfortunately, Chewtle having 80 hit points really sucks, as it means you can't grab it with Buddy Poffin. As for some changes, you could remove the Mimikyu and Ogerpon and replace them with a 1-1 Slowbro line. This means you only have to take 4 prizes with Drednaw, then follow up with Slowbro and win the game. Neutralization Zone is another option, but since it can't be recovered and is easily bumped, Hero's Cape is just better. Looking ahead to the future, Counter Dane is getting reprinted with Surging Sparks in November, but it takes up your tool attachment on Drednaw, so I don't think it's a great fit here. All in all, as long as you don't put too much thought into a Drednaw deck, it actually seems playable. Now we come to a deck that I never thought would have any sort of chance in our Stellar Crown meta, yet it's won a couple of small shop tournaments in Japan. Of course, I'm talking about Cradily with Omastar V. And yes, it's pronounced Omastar, not Omastar. As I've said before, no one plays fossil Pokemon unless they're absolutely busted because the requirement is just too much. You have to play the basic fossil Pokemon in your deck, but since it's an item, none of your conventional ball search cards can find it. So is Cradily busted enough that it's worth the headache? Well, no. The ability is fine. Once during your turn, you can flip a coin for each Cradily you have in play. If it's heads, they get affected by your choice of burn, confusion, or poison, 3 status conditions that can all exist simultaneously. Then for a single energy, it does 100 damage for each status condition on your opponent's active. If your coin flip luck is high, this could win a few games. If it's bad, you'll close PTCGL without conceding, forcing your opponent to sit there for 5 minutes while they wait for live to realize you're gone. There's a few cards in the deck that allow this strategy to work, including Amistar V. For a single colorless energy, the list runs Jet Energy to get it into the active. Amistar searches your deck for 2 Pokemon that evolve from a fossil and puts them directly onto your bench. So choosing to go second isn't a bad thing, as it allows you to grab 2 Laleep right away, which can evolve into Cradily the next turn. Problem is, Amistar only has 190 hit points, so don't expect it to stick around for too long. Next, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, there's actually a deck that wants Dangerous Laser as its A-Spec. Dangerous Laser simply burns and confuses your opponent's active. Add in Brute Bonnet, now you can place all 3 status conditions without even needing to use Cradily's ability. And because why not, you can boost the damage you deal with poison by 40 thanks to Radiant Sneasler and Perilous Jungle, plus an extra 40 with Binding Mochi, turning Cradily into someone who could potentially hit extremely hard. The list I've got here from Japan is fairly straightforward for an Amistar fossil deck. You want to do everything in your power to use Amistar's Primal Guidance turn 1 going second, putting 2 Laleep directly onto your bench. Bug Catching Set and Ultra Ball find Cradily, then you start hoping for heads on Mucus Buffet, knowing that you have Brute Bonnet as backup. There's no Squawkabilly EX, I don't hate it for the extra card draw, so Mew EX is there to help, same with Pheasantipity EX. And at the end of a game, Blood Moon Ursaluna can do 240 damage for free. Because you'll likely be getting an okay amount of poison and burn damage into play with this deck, Radiant Alakazam isn't a horrible idea. Same with De-Evolution and maybe even Frostlass. If you want to get super spicy and lose access to Forest Seal Stone in the process, Drapion V-Star paralyzes and poisons, potentially buying you a turn while also powering up Cradily. And if they switch their active Pokemon on their turn, Magcargo leaves the new active burn. But at a certain point, you just have to accept that your Cradily deck will never be perfect and hope for luck to be on your side. For my 5th and final rogue deck coming in Stellar Crown, we have Slowking, which features a really fun, albeit tough to pull off attack, similar to what we saw with Magcargo EX. For a Psychic and a colorless, Slowking discards the top card of your deck. If it's a Pokemon without a rule box, you can choose one of that Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. The obvious partner here is Gardevoir EX. Kirlia helps draw cards, while Gardevoir accelerates energy into play. And as an added bonus, Gardevoir puts damage counters on Slowking with Psychic Embrace. While you might think it'd be a good idea to cast a wide net and have as many options available as possible, you're wrong. There's honestly just 2 main ones. Onix is the best for taking big KOs. For each damage counter on Slowking, you deal 50 damage. Attach 4 energy with Psychic Embrace, start swinging for 400. As for Kyurem, that allows you to snipe 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. You lose all the energy attached to Slowking in the process, but that's a non-issue thanks to Gardevoir. In order to get a Pokemon on top of your deck, you have to run Academy at night. Something that I've grown to loathe that puts a card from your hand on top of your deck. Add in Lonazade and Night Stretcher, now you have a way to easily loop attacks. Looking at the list, the reason you play the 70 hit point Slowpoke is because it's the Q to start. Also because it can be grabbed with Buddy Puffin. Otherwise, this will feel familiar to regular Gardevoir players. There's no TM evolution though, and only 1 rare candy since Arven isn't a thing here, so you might get off to some slow starts. Because of the nature of Slowking's attack, there's a few changes you could make. Conkeldurr comes to mind, giving you a way to deal 250 damage for 2 energy. Onix is still better paired with Gardevoir, but if you're having trouble getting energy in the discard pile, Conkeldurr is an option. Then there's the Dragon Diplin, which was featured in the only winning Japanese Slowking list I could find. It switches in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and does 70 damage to it. Finally, Crobat. While it only does 30 damage, if you use math correctly and take a knockout with Critical Bite, you take an extra 3 prize cards. Which rogue decks are you planning on trying when Stellar Crown comes to Pokemon TCG Live on September 12th? And are there any changes you'd make to the list that I showed off? Let me know in the comments, because I only have like a week of good new decks planned for Stellar Crown because the set is so small. I desperately need help.